Welcome to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everybody, William Harris here. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of this podcast where I feature experts in the D2C industry, sharing strategies on how to scale your business and achieve your goals. Today's guest is Aaron Orendorff, a personal friend of mine. He was formerly the head of marketing he currently is the head of marketing at Recart, but previously he was the editor-in-chief over at Shopify Plus. He was the VP of marketing at Common Thread Collective. His work has appeared on the New York Times, Forbes, Mashable, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Lifehacker, Business Insider, Success, and nearly every content marketing publication under the digital sun. Aaron, I'm excited to have you here today.
With that intro, so am I.
Yes. And I was thinking about who introduced us, and I think it was Tommy Walker. Am I correct? Does that sound right to you?
It has to be. This was back in the day when Shopify Plus was just becoming a thing. People forget that. We were writing pieces about what is cloud commerce. What does it mean to be a SaaS? Like that was a thing we were writing about 7-8 years ago. And you dropped this massive piece on a migration over to Shopify Plus that I think you got a lot of heat for, right?
I did. Magento did not like me. When I wrote that, at the time, Shopify did not even have a 10x10 booth at IRCE, right? The Internet Retailers Conference, which I think now is called RICE, RICE. It's changed a little bit. It's gone through some iterations, but Shopify was they didn't even have a 10x10 booth. I wrote this article. It's, I want to say like 7,000 words about migrating a large website from Magento over to Shopify Plus. And I can remember people in the e-commerce space thought I was absolutely nuts. They're like, Shopify, that's for small businesses. You're an 8-figure store. What are you doing going to Shopify? But I remember Tommy really liked it because he was there. And I ended up on a call with the entire C-suite of Magento where they were like, okay, hey, a lot of things you said were fair. Let's talk through some of them. Let's see where we can go from here and how we can make Magento better. And I remember giving them some thoughts and ideas, and I think they took some of that advice and some of that they didn't. And I'd say that leaves them where they are there. I love some of the people at Magento, but I still don't think that they've leveled up to where Shopify's at.
These young bucks, these young kittens and cats, they don't know. They don't know what the world was like. Freaking 7 years ago. I mean, it really is. It's wild to think of that such a stir that somebody would have the gall to move to Shopify Plus. What's that? Right? They just don't know.
I do want to go ahead and real quick, we're going to get into the good stuff in a minute, but I want to give our sponsorship message here. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million, and one of them that IPO'd recently. And we were ranked as the 12th fastest growing agency in the world by Adweek. You can learn more on our website at element.com. That's ELUMYNT.com. Well, okay, and so let's talk about when we were young bucks and when you were, starting off there, and like what has brought you to where you are now at Recart, like short journey path of going from, you could go even before what you were doing at Shopify Plus. I'll let you tell the story wherever you want to, but either before Shopify Plus or coming from Shopify Plus over to where you are now at Recart. What's this backstory here?
I've lived 3 distinct professional lives. And the first one was in a mix of religious circles. I went to seminary. I got what's known as a Master's of Divinity. Did not grow up in a religious home. Would definitely Aaron from 15 years ago. It's call Aaron today an absolute heretic. So we should be clear about that. Those are my roots when it comes to the way I think about communicating. Successfully burned that life to the ground a little over a decade ago. Now I jumped into online writing at the same time as teaching. So I don't know if you even know about. I was a college professor full time.
I remember that you were a college professor for a little. Yes.
Yeah. So I walk in these worlds, but the unifying factor of all of those worlds is this idea that the point of communication is to affect change.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something to be said for rallying the base, preaching to the choir, retaining your existing customers, those sort of things. But I've always been absorbed in this world of the idea is to get what's in my head out my mouth or my fingertips into somebody else's in a way that makes them say yes, or at the very least, Tell me more. And that has encapsulated everything. Because in fact, I'll shout this out. I taught the Speech 101 course, as well as advanced speaking, advanced communications. And I'd love to open that course with, okay, why are you all here? And it would always be dead quiet, and somebody would try to suck up, right? And eventually we'd get to the idea that you're here because they say you have to be to get a degree. And some of you are knocking this out from the jump. Some of you are here on your last leg and you're scraping the end of the requirements barrel. None of you want to be here. Let's start with that as the reality. So let me pitch you for the next 40 minutes about why you should love this class, why it's going to pay off. So it's always that idea of communicating to affect change. That's my heartbeat.
That's huge. You know, I feel like there's a lot of times where we see people get frustrated that other people aren't taking the action that we want them to take when we haven't done a very good job of communicating why they should actually care or want to do this. We see this in the advertising world all the time. We see customers, you know, as an advertiser, well, why don't I have a better CAC? Well, because you're not saying anything unique about your product at all whatsoever, or whether that's, you know, a class or whatever. This happens. Let's even say, sorry, you're ready to jump in. I'll hold and then I'll get to where else I was going to go.
No, because you have to want a thing to be true before you're going to give any mental or emotional energy to it. There has to be something where I have a pre-existing set of desires, a story that I live within, something that I'm afraid of and something that I want to accomplish in every area of my life, down to where I hope we go to eat dinner tonight or what movie we see and watch, right? There's something I want and I'm afraid of. And it's not until I see how the thing you're talking to me about overlaps, encapsulates, cross-references, digs into, and helps me fulfill the thing that I actually already want, till I'm going to give you that's the thing, even the mental and emotional energy to pay attention in this attention economy, right? You got to have a reason to care. And that reason
and this is
1,000% self-centered. It's
absolutely.
Yeah,
which is sad, but it's true. And I would say this is even true for social causes where oftentimes it's like, wait a minute, is your marketing message as a social cause right now, is it bringing people who don't currently support your cause into this, or are you only reaching out to the people who already think the way that you do? And I see this all the time where it's like, why don't they get it? Well, you're not talking to them in a language that they understand yet. And so you can say, well, they need to just get with the program. Maybe that's true. How about you try to talk to them though in a language that they understand?
It's about what you want to accomplish.
Right.
Such a fundamental question in all of life. What do you want? And what you're doing expresses more of what you actually want than what you would say.
Mm-hmm.
The actions you're taking are perfectly aligned with what the desires of your heart and psychology and deepest you're doing. And so if the doing isn't getting what you say you want, then the idea is, okay, I either have to be honest about the thing that I actually want, which is fine, go do that. Or I have to radically rethink if I'm trying to get that yes, that nod, that the next 3 seconds, pay attention to me, go from the headline to the first line to the third line. If I'm trying to get that CTA, like whatever that thing is, what do I actually want to accomplish? And then align my actions with that and bake my own desires back into that deeper so that I don't get distracted by the things that piss me off or irk me or complain about to no good end. Like they just don't get it. No, that's a you problem.
Right. Yes. So let's bring this into SMS messaging. This is a natural transition, right? But there's a lot that can be said for how this fits within the messaging that you're sending to your customers at every level. So from an advertising perspective, but also the messages they're sending after they've purchased from you and whatever. So one of the things we're talking about is, you know, sometimes some of these SMS messages these campaigns are losing some of their effectiveness over time. The market's getting more crowded, maybe haven't reached a tipping point yet, but what are the things that you're seeing that are warning signs that these things are becoming less effective, SMS is less effective, and how can we begin to fight against that to be more effective in what we're sending out?
What's fun about my career, and my career has been defined by, as long as I'm a step or two in front of my audience, I'm safe. I don't have the exhaustive answers. And over the last 6 months coming into Recart, that's been an absolute drinking from the fire hose on a whole new level and nuance to marketing that is primarily centered on driving purchase behavior, creating an imperative to act now. That is the nature of text messages. And it's the nature of text messages in the way that we use it as a communication channel. And so it bleeds right on over into how people interact with it with brands, right?
Right.
We can go back to like the thing that you want, making the thing that they want front and center. So when I first joined up with Recart, we had done an exhaustive study through, there are just some smart data engineering cookies over there. And they basically set the SMS landscape, right, off of a company called Store Leads that ranks all the Shopify as well as other platforms and buckets them into things like sentiment and traffic and growth in social followers to try to create this overall score, and then rank them from 1 to 150,000 to 500,000. And then you identify your ideal customer persona based on those ranks. Who do we serve best? Yep. And what blew me away when I first came into Recart was that it's not until you hit that top 1,000, literally the 1,000 biggest Shopify stores in the world, that you see majority SMS adoption. Outside of 1,000, the closest it was like up to 55, 60% of the top 10,000. Sure. Yeah. And then it drops down into like, you're at 17, 20% for anybody at the 50,000 to 100,000 viable growing businesses. But just, it's shocked me because I live in this marketing world where I pay attention to it. I'm aware of it. So I think everyone else is doing it. Right. So here's the really wild part is in those last 6 months, we've continued to do these updates and these studies. And that adoption curve has peaked, accelerated, been inundated. There's still not majority adoption at the plus 50,000 rank and beyond for those smaller, medium stores. But it's ramped up so quickly that the issue is now becoming what once was a sacred space where you had real estate to spare is now just as crowded as any other, where there's competition and people are that much more protective over who they will give their phone number to than their email, because it's still so in your face. It still elicits such an immediate response. So the primary problem then now is where most brands spend the majority of their money is on campaigns, one-off messages, batch and blast for a better, So the majority of your money goes into those to the tune of like 80 to 90% of most budgets. Whereas 65 to 70% of the revenue is coming in off of automations, which immediately creates like the number one lesson I want to say on this SMS front is number one is maybe this sounds obvious, but it's list growth that will determine the success of your SMS marketing. Fresh leads coming in. Do everything you possibly can under your power to hone separate desktop from mobile pop-up experiences. Test the crap out of whether or not a single tap directly into the messaging app on someone's phone that then sends them a message, you send it back, that feels like a native experience. Test the crap out of whether or not you should go email first, then SMS. Should you combine the two into one? Should you do phone entry? Does your audience, what's the churn rate even between that first message sent and the double opt-in confirmation on it, right? There is so much meat left on the bones where folks are looking at, they pay attention all day, every day to those email opt-ins, and then SMS takes like a back seat. And when it comes to the clutch moments like Black Friday, Father's Day, Mother's Day, new product releases, that's where that purchase imperative pays off with a channel like SMS, and it can make or break the difference in real outlandish success during those big moments, especially, to say nothing of just ongoing interactions, communication, brand building with your audience. So that's the number one, is go forth and test the crap out of separate desktop versus mobile. All right.
It makes sense. That said, when you're talking about list growth and list building, one of my favorite types of list growth, even when we were talking email, was the best email address you can get is somebody who actually just purchased from you. Same thing for phone number, right? That's the best one. They actually have an affinity towards your product. You know that they're qualified because they just bought it, especially if you have something that has, repeat purchases and abilities there. When it gets into the people who haven't purchased before, I've never been a huge fan of going too hard at acquiring some of that information from people beforehand, because for me personally, now this is just a personal thing, I find it kind of annoying to get a message when I'm like, I haven't even really kind of got, like, does that really truly convince people to buy as opposed to something else, like seeing an ad or whatever that they might see?
Such a good phrase you just used there. You said, I don't like.
Right.
Right? And you know where I'm going with this.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing too, because I think this is also, okay, let's go. If number one is list growth will determine the success of your SMS marketing. Number two is, I don't know, we could say something like your preferences will kill.
Sure.
Right? It'll
the hippo.
And it's especially acute among marketers, where every time I see like something good, cool get released about SMS marketing, what people love to rally around is conversational commerce, delivering content, delivering choose your own adventure via SMS with responses, and like press 1 for this. What character and friends are you? Or Sex in the City, or like now I've just dated myself as well.
Yeah.
When like on the one hand, customers are far less sensitive than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
So they have a threshold for spam that would you like the basic idea is push right up against that for list churn versus revenue growth, separating new from returning revenue, new from returning customers, push right up against that threshold on how can we push, and then start moving into the, like for list growth, right? Welcome flow. One and done will make you think SMS marketing doesn't work, where you've built this robust email flow that comes out, looks for preferences, even before somebody's purchased. What pages have they viewed? Let's exclude them when they abandon a cart. Let's exclude them when they make that first purchase along the way. Whereas with SMS, it's like hit them with the discount, leave it alone. And what we see time and time again is that first message in your welcome flow is absolutely going to be the money maker, but it's the 24-hour delay, contact card, 24-hour delay, review, 24-hour delay, some content-related upgrade about the product benefits themselves. It's this creating a staggered experience right from the jump that, one, conditions your audience to get good content from you, but it's the sort of offery, promotional, purchase imperative content that does perform really well in SMS. But what it's also doing is it's such a ethereal. It comes and goes. And I do this constantly with friends, right? If you text me, if you DM me, and I don't respond to it in the first 30 seconds of having seen it, as soon as it's marked red, it's gone. Absolutely. So what does anybody who's really smart do? You send a follow-up, right? You've got to check back in with, and that's exactly what you should be doing with SMS too, as well. Is particularly as people, you can measure things like click-through rates and start segmenting throughout your welcome flow to just be like, only send this third message to people who have clicked one of the first two. And then give them a second if they haven't yet for that next one that comes 48 or 72 hours after it. So it's just a matter of like giving it that same sort of attention and adopting it the same way you think about doing it in your own personal life, not as a marketer, but as a human.
Well, and I think the best way that I like to look at this from a human perspective then, and this is something that I talk about with my team all the time, even on the ad side as well, is how do you romance your customers or romance your leads, right? If you send that first message, if that first message that you send to them, they haven't made a purchase from you before, is just to buy something, it's a booty call, right? Like that's all you've done, right? Like you've just done nothing to establish a relationship at all with this person. But if you're nurturing people along the lines of something where you're asking them about like, what their preferences are, what they like, and you're establishing some kind of a relationship with them. I think that gives you a little bit more of an ability where you're saying, hey, let's go hang out. Like there's obviously some synergy here. There's something that we like about each other. And I find this is true on the post-purchase side as well. This is where I focus on a lot more on the post-purchase side is, after they've made that purchase, if the first message that you're sending to somebody is buy again, and they're getting a text message, an email, and they're seeing ads that say buy again, and you've done nothing to confirm and establish that relationship with them, you're limiting your growth because you're focused on the here and now, and you're not looking at the lifetime value of that customer.
I would say give them the booty call, because here's the reason why. That first one is right? Because what people say over and over again and what they respond to is, it's what is the fundamental offer inside the pop-up or that's merchandised on your website and it matches the pop-up? What is the fundamental offer you're going for? 9 times out of 10, that's going to be some sort of discount. Maybe it's 10% for the email, 15% to then sign up for text. Give them the discount immediately and give it to them both barrels. Don't do the, hey, let's send an email, wait an hour to see if they open it. That's becoming less and less reliable anyway. It's given to them in both channels. They can respond to the one they want most. And whatever that thing is you promised, hit it. Now,
I like that.
If they don't respond to that first message, that's when you then start thinking about, okay, what does this person actually need?
Yep.
And that has everything to do with the type of product, the SKU range that you're covering. Did you get them to tell you about their preferences on the intake on male versus female fashion apparel, that sort of piece? Like, what do you know about them? And how can you then begin cultivating that relationship? Is it fit? Is it reviews? Is it social proof? Is it just they really like, you've got a strong brand identity? I think of people like Chubbies or Liquid Death, where a lot of people are coming into it with a really high expectation of what they've experienced on the creative front on social media or even on the website itself. And you've got to fulfill that promise then next to continue that momentum. But give them give them the booty call first. That's how let them take you up on it if that's what they're into. And then start thinking strategically about what does this person actually need to then begin to develop the relationship.
And so this is part of what you call like the 5 flow. Am I right? Like you have your 5 flow. Is that part of what this is?
Yeah. So like the bread and butter is welcome flow that is at least 3 to 5 messages long and has a 1-week delay at the end for whatever that final message is that amplifies either the discount or the offer in some way. Especially if between every single one of those messages, you're filtering out anybody who's abandoned a cart or made a purchase.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to have these conditional checks along the way. Cart abandonment, next out the gate. Sync it so that you're just handing them, this is what you left behind. No additional discount. Do not give away any more margin than you need to, especially if they're not a existing customer. If they're a new customer, they've already got the discount you set them up with. Often all they need is that reminder, and text is one of the easiest ways, as long as you're sending them directly back to a rebuilt cart that also includes whatever that opt-in incentive was. Abandoned cart. Once you have their information, you can also then start doing things like a browse abandoned message that couples alongside that. That's not going to be as targeted because it's just looking at what their most recent pages are that they were on. If you can tie that to a collection, excellent. It gives you a bit more breadth in that browse abandonment to kind of shoot a wider shot about what they might be interested in.
Yep.
Fulfillment is a huge one. And it's not just you've placed an order, here's the confirmation. Shopify now they just released 8 or 9 different events inside of Shopify for all the different stages of fulfillment. From shipped to order delayed to order is en route to it's, all of these to sync that up with your SMS platform, because the big benefit of that is once somebody has placed an order, that's when they're at their primest to want to hear from you because they've given you money and you haven't given them the thing they gave you money for.
You've got their attention.
You have their attention. You've got a captive audience. And it's like the more robust you make that fulfillment flow, and like a program like Wonderment is beautiful at this. Like the custom landing pages they will make, so you don't just have to go to the order fulfillment page. You can do upsells on those pages. You can make the emails gorgeous and fully branded instead of just like out of the box. But if all you're doing is giving them an update every single time something happens, you're creating this Pavlovian response to when this brand texts me, it's something I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. And the more of those touch points you can pack into that really prime real estate window before the thing they gave you money for arrives, the better your open rates, the better your click-through rates are from then on. We've just seen it over and over again. When someone implements this really thorough fulfillment process, taking advantage of every piece of data that you can offer them, it has compounding effects later on during that initial reorder. And then I would say like fifth is to think through your natural reorder window, your natural upsells, downsells, so that you're not going in for the ask too soon. But if it's replenishment, if it's based off of a starter kit or full size, like getting smart and savvy about what the person's ordered based on product conditions to set those delay for when is the next time to strike. And then essentially you're sending them into a smaller version of the welcome series to begin with.
Sure. I feel like if you ring a bell right now, maybe I'll start salivating, right? That's my Pavlovian joke right there. But it is true where, there's even a lot of this where you look at salespeople can be really good at this idea of getting people to say yes, right? Where it's like, okay, I want you to say yes to this thing, which is maybe to sign on this line, but I'll ask, maybe it's insurance or something. You're like, hey, do you care about your family? Yes. Do you want to make sure that your family is safe? Yes. Do you want to sign this paper for this insurance to make sure your family's safe? You're kind of conditioned to that. And the same thing is true where it's like if you're sending them messages that you're conditioning people to want to not open your messages, you're conditioning them to not want to open any more of your messages as you come from. But if you send them a message that they want to get, that they're excited to get, they want to open, they maybe even want to interact with, you're conditioning them to want to open the rest of your messages here on out and to be a part of that conversation.
That yes ladder, that's such a great on-site tactic. It's a great from ad to lander to product page to then whatever the post-purchase follow-up is. That yes ladder is such a good, or often you hear people talk about the micro yes that gets you to the macro yes. Those are great psychological principles. And that's interesting. I think the place that, so the other one is, I don't know if I'd put this in like the 5 foundational flows, but depending on your product, like this is incredibly true for anything that's consumable, CPG, especially true for beauty and supplement brands, which are really still growing strong in the e-commerce D2C space, is to give somebody a really thorough, step-by-step, sometimes even day-by-day onboarding process to your product.
Sure.
And you're leaning into that same exact Pavlovian, now I've got the thing. How do I make sure I use the thing right to get the best results? So you get this powerful 2-for-1 of like you're continuing that trust to be an advisor, earning your space in their inbox and on their phone. But you're also helping them sidestep the issues people have questions about, struggles with. Like great example. Okay, one of our largest brands is a women's supplement brand, and I'm not even allowed to say who they are. They crossed 160 million in ARR, and they're aiming at like 100% year-over-year growth in this climate. It's absolutely nuts, right?
That is impressive.
And so we took their email flow and a custom landing page for first-time orders for their hero SKUs, and we rebuilt that in text form. And the thing that blew me away is one of the messages is all about storage and how you don't have to put it. It doesn't need to be refrigerated.
Sure.
And I'm like, why would they be mentioning it doesn't need to be refrigerated? Like this seems like and it's this psychological hack of what they realized was with their audience. A lot of people, thought that it goes in the fridge and then they forget about it and they don't take it at regular intervals.
Sure. Yeah.
If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So they're telling them you don't need to refrigerate it. And then there's this so put it next to your bed or on your counter. They're literally telling people where to put it as an example of like an FAQ.
Yeah.
And it increases the visibility of the product in the home, and it increases reorders.
I love it. So let's talk about some of the good, bad, and ugly of the way that this is being used. That's a great example of how it's being done well. And I like that idea of sending something over after people buy it to be able to make sure that you guide them towards the best usage of this. What are other ways that you've seen SMS being used that you just floors you and you say, they've got this figured out?
Here's a very simple one, but if your one and done campaigns are one and done, meaning we do a regular cadence of 2 messages a week, 1 to existing customers, 1 to non-purchasers.
Sure.
Okay. And then we set the whole thing over again the next week, and maybe we do some spike peak moments, but you're sending out a pretty good cadence of 2 a week, not to the same audience.
Yep.
Okay. The easiest, simplest thing to do is every other week, or even on top of every single one of those messages, is to tie a second message to it that gets delivered 24 hours later that if you do an MMS for the first with like some GIF and it's branded and it's longer and it's more storytelling and it's got an explanation to it sort of thing, just a second message that's a pure SMS that only goes to people that clicked the first message, didn't abandon a cart, and didn't purchase. This leans into that ethereal nature of it, where people hit it, then they forget about it. And this will be like 8 to 10% of every audience. So it's a really minimal send. It's way smaller. It's SMS. It's super inexpensive. And it can 2 to 3x your campaign revenue just by entering that as a regular cadence into this process of before you send another new message, just clean up that ROI from the first one. Just scoop it off the table. All right. And then absolutely understand your primary reorder window and exclude recent purchasers as often as you can, especially from those first, more expensive messages. That's one of those two together can, especially as margin and efficiency just becomes the flight to value versus growth at all cost, right? Massively improve the returns and the efficiency of your overall program.
First of all, thank you for pronouncing GIF with a hard G. I'm right there in team hard G GIF. Second of all, though, what about some examples of where this is being done poorly, where you look at this and you think, that's a terrible strategy, almost quit your SMS program, or maybe it works because the size of the business or something along those lines?
Yeah. I'll go in two extremes on this front. I've mentioned them before. They're the brand I love to hate when it comes to SMS marketing. Forever 21, I will never unsubscribe to their messages, right? Because it is, and I'll send you, like, I just love doing this. I'll record a screen. We can like show it. We'll do this with one of the promos of like, perfect. It is like once a week. Hey, a-hole, go effing buy something. I have no time for you. I'm not even paying attention to your purchase history. And it's just like, bam, 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 bam. Like it's the ugliest scroll in my phone. It's brutal. And here's the thing. At Forever 21 scale, they would not be doing that if it wasn't efficient for them and paying off. They've got a large enough audience with so many new visitors that are like their list growth's got to be off the chart. And so it's like, we can churn. It's fine. We've got whatever window of 6 months that somebody's really active with us and then they're gone or they're in forever, like whatever. They know what they're doing. And so on the one hand, people see that and they go, oh, that's terrible. That's ugly. So let's not do anything like that. Right. We're scared to like look like spam with our audience, to send them an offer or text them more than once a month or at the big seasonal sale. Right. So like the knee jerk reaction to that is to think, oh, it's so ugly. Don't do that. Right. So that's like the one that I love to hate on the one hand. But then the other opposite extreme of that is you'll look at folks like I mentioned Chubby's is great at this. Native is really good at this. Go subscribe to Liquid Death's SMS. Jones Road Beauty. Jones Road Beauty is great too. But the thing about those is you've got to understand that they've got life cycle managers who live and breathe and they are specialists and they are naturally conversational and they're content creators that are on those fronts that are fueling that in a way that is just not accessible for most brands. And so if you try to do this conversational commerce thing, one, the returns simply aren't going to be there for most brands. Most customers do not want to join your family or have a friend. They just want to know when the new thing that they're interested in gets released and when the price is right. That's what they want to know.
Keep that context in mind.
Tell them that. Don't feel like you have to build out this, especially, I know I harp on this quite a bit, that, text 1 for this, 2 for that. There are places that content lives well. Interactive content lives well. And people go to consume long form content longer than 60 seconds, right? On YouTube and on TikTok, you can build relationships in those places. It's far less expensive than real estate like an MMS where you're just going to have to pay for it. And you're either going to get burnt out because the level of lift is so high, or you're just going to get straight up in trouble for it and you're not using the channel for what it's intended for.
It reminds me so much of, let's just say, the early days of even UGC on social media. For a while, it was like, don't post something on Instagram unless this is the absolute most amazing, breathtaking photo you've ever taken in your entire life, right? And it was like, how dare you post that? And like, look at your Instagram feed and it's like, that's out of order. What are you doing? And we've gotten away from that in a lot of different places, where TikTok is almost the complete opposite of this in many ways, where it's just, say what you want to say it in a fun way, have some fun. It's okay if it's a little bit gritty. Same thing for UGC. It works, even though it's ugly, maybe it's because it's ugly. And that's maybe then it sounds very true from a text message perspective, where think about what people want. When they signed up for the text message, what did they actually want? They maybe didn't want you to become their best friend, their BFF, right? They wanted to know these things. Just stick to that and they'll be happy with that. But if you try to turn that into something that it isn't, then you're like the creepy guy who's like, look, we're friends. We're not more than friends. Stop trying to message me like we're more than friends right now.
Exactly. And it's those two extremes that hamstring brands and especially retention teams, thinking I've got to live up to this expectation of an amazing experience where we're having conversations back and forth and we're being snarky and it's fun.
Sure.
And, I just don't have that sort of energy, or that opposite of
like
I
the
just
Wendy's
don't want to
social media
people.
guy.
I'm scared they're going to churn, they're going to have a bad. And just to realize that the middle ground is get your foundational flow set up.
Yeah.
Get a regular cadence where people hear from you. Exclude based on your reorder window, and send those follow-ups for click but didn't purchase reminders. Yeah. That sort of just that bread and butter, along with the list growth, that's how you unlock 15, 20% SMS as a channel for overall revenue. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Don't overthink it. Well, okay, so this is very short form content. And when I think of typical Aaron Orendorff content, I'm your fanboy. You know that. I've said that in many ways, where it's like there's very few people that I think, man, he really writes very well. This is a difference from you now, where you're really getting into a lot of short form content as well. Do you still love long form content? Are you still doing anything with long form content as well?
This feels like I paid you for the first question and now I'm paying you for the second one. You're just like teeing me up.
No. But here's the thing. You and I talk often enough. So here's what everybody has to understand is it's like you and I, we still talk almost on a weekly basis to each other. So it's like, I feel like I know a lot of these things and I know what's already in your mind. So I'm throwing you softballs because I know what you want to talk about.
My heart still beats for long form written content that mixes existing organic and CPC search demand. So I can key into what people are out there looking to try to solve or fix with an original take on that for thought leadership, Uber data, all wrapped up in let's make it practical and example heavy. That little, like, especially if you're watching this on YouTube where you get the clip on this, that little like hand gesture thing of like the 3 in the circle, that's how you make content that grows your business. Yeah. It's true for e-commerce. And it's uberly true. Now that GPT, the bar for mediocre content just got lower, which means the more you still commit yourself to serving your audience in the way that I just described, the more you will stand out. And it's a gift to them to be that answer in a time of need when they're looking for something. And then finding those distribution channels that interrupt not just existing demand, but create it as well in those unique ways.
I love it. I want to transition into who is Aaron Orendorff a little bit. So this is one of my favorite part of these interviews is getting to know you as a person. And I feel like there's a lot that I know about you, but a lot of people may not know what I know. What do you fear?
Man, my fear. Okay, so I've got 3 daughters, 17, 12, and 10. So the right answer is supposed to be, I fear their future not being what they wanted, et cetera, et cetera. That does not dominate my mind share and my heart share. What I'm afraid of is I'm just a writer who somehow tricked a few people into thinking he was also a marketer. And those chickens are going to come home to roost. And I'm going to be roundly shamed publicly for ever having the gall to think I could lead marketing, and I will become destitute. You ask me, what do I fear? My gosh. Yeah, dude, it's that. It really is imposter syndrome. And it comes on strong because, I haven't run an e-commerce business. I haven't sold physical products on the internet. That's part of it. I got jumped into Shopify Plus at the right time when there were so few people in the room that could do writing and content well, that I was given these opportunities that far exceeded probably where I was at in my career. And it was amazing. And I had to learn and I had to level up to get into there. But having that as the baseline experience of just being like a freaking step ahead, and then having those times too where I just step in it, it's that's what at the core of Aaron is really afraid of, is being exposed.
I think I can relate to that. I think everybody who is in the limelight in any way, shape, or form doing something can relate to that. I laughed, which may have seemed insensitive, but I hope you understood. The laughter was coming from out of that's so far from the reality that I could ever absolutely see, because I've seen your writing and your marketing abilities, that I'm like, it's not even a real thing. And so I'm laughing, hopefully with you in the appropriate way, but I hope that you understood that that's where it's coming from, because you are an incredible marketer, but I can understand those same feelings that I think most entrepreneurs and marketers we struggle with. We see a lot of great things out there, and so I can relate to that.
Oh, that's such a good. We are inundated with great things, because the algorithm tosses those great things to the top.
Yeah.
What you're seeing on a daily basis is the cream of the crop at a time in human civilization when creation is at its apex. Like, give yourself a break, dear listener.
Yes.
It's what you experience as the majority is the minority.
Right. I feel like you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but let's say that you are in this space where, and let's even say, heaven forbid, not you, somebody listening, let's say that you move forward and you do fail at what you tried to do. It's going to happen, right? Let's just say that there's a market recession, not that far-fetched. And let's say that your business doesn't grow the way that you had planned it to. Let's say that you have to lay people off. Let's say you actually have to fold up shop and you close the business. These things are very realities. How do you decouple your self-worth from your success in your business or what you're doing?
I have to anchor myself in something that is so much bigger than me, I get dwarfed and right-sized. I can only answer that question from what emotionally resonates and is existentially true for me. The neat thing about this is another one of our mutual friends, Jacob McMillan. Yep. He was talking to me about this too. Phenomenal copywriter, phenomenal marketer.
I agree.
And for him, I had this unlock moment where I was talking to him because he was talking about it in the sense of he finds his solace in absolute nihilism. That when he is struck by the outlandish statistical impossibility of him existing in a universe that is going nowhere, careening from nothing into nothing, and will one day not exist, the infinitesimal likelihood of him existing in this thing and the vastness of the thing in which he exists, that nothing he does matters.
Sure.
And he's like, when that reality hits me, I can breathe. And it struck me because I realized, like, we're using two different vehicles. Like, I would use spirituality and I would talk about God as my way of doing that. But for him, but it's the same like mechanism of, that I have to be just anchored in something so much bigger than me. I've got a really robust, built out set of spiritual disciplines in my life and honest relationships that I live in that are brutally honest. And I have a lot of inventory taking. And I know that those things during the hard times are where that's the only way I find relief.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. For me, it's the magnitude, at least, of a creator, a God who cares about me, despite whatever I contribute to a marketing campaign or not. Right? Like that's like the idea of there's a song that talks about fully known and fully loved, and it's that idea where it's like that I believe that there is an entity, that God fully knows me and fully loves me despite all of my downcomings. And so it's not a matter of like, what if I fail, as much as it's like, I already have failed in so many ways, and I'm still loved in spite of all of my failures. That's actually freeing. But to your point of what Jacob's saying, the nihilism there as well, it reminds me of a verse in, not to take this into, spiritual message here, but a verse in Ecclesiastes, and I'm going to misquote it, but it was very comforting to me when I was feeling very down and frustrated. Something to the effect of, if eventually everybody that you had a strife with, an anger with, or anything, they'll also all be dead. And so literally there's going to be a point where it's like every interaction that you had, it's all gone. None of that lives on or lasts. And let's even say a couple generations from now, I don't know anybody that my grandpa had beef with. I don't know anybody that my grandpa had beef with, right? It's like there's like generationally, like all of these things, they're gone. And so to your point, even of what Jacob's saying from a nihilistic perspective, that it's so vast and in almost inconsequential.
And I think some people do this with hobbies, friends, and families.
Sure.
But it comes down to that, like something outside of you that is independent of that success or that failure.
Yeah.
And I got a little choked up when you were talking just now, because that's the only reality. Like, I can only speak to what I know, and that is it. Either at the end of the day, a trapdoor opens at the bottom of this universe and I fall into absolute nothingness, or there are the hands of a sovereign, loving being that were always there and will catch me. Mm-hmm. And that's like some sappy stuff to talk about on a marketing podcast. I mean, but listen, like, you got to do what you got to do to make it through.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. What about if I was in an office with you, or I was hanging out with you, what would I find out about you that I otherwise wouldn't know about you if I was just hanging out, online? Because it's like online, you only see like this little frame here, right? But it's like, what would I learn about you that I would learn if I was hanging out in person with you that maybe other people don't know?
I am so prone to shiny object syndrome that you would never see it from what looks like the consistent content and strategies and coordinated efforts that I launch. How much of that is just I saw something and like went after it? Yeah. That is, there's this feeling I think that people have about me that I put out a lot and I lead a lot and I'm like, I don't actually put out that much. I don't have that much foresight. When I see something that's shiny and I go after it and I strike and I push and then I figure out how to connect that to the next thing. Yeah. How much of what I actually do is just happenstance would shock you. It would be embarrassing.
I think there's something to this, and this is going way off. I have no business talking about it, but I'm going to say it anyways. There's something to be said for, let's just say, gut and intuition that I don't think that we really fully understand scientifically as well as we should yet. But I would take this into even, let's just say, quantum mechanics and the way that is tied in towards things. And so I think that there's a lot of things that our gut might have intuitive knowledge about that we don't necessarily process with our brains in the same way. Outside of 3 dimensions, going into, I think that they say topologically, our brain functions almost in 11 dimensions. So there's a lot of things that we might know, but without knowing why we know. And so you're just saying, you're just maybe good at being able to run with whatever you're feeling within your gut. And I think that's a very good thing. And I think a lot of other successful people have felt that way as well.
The trick is, here's the trick. What separates that from being productive versus harmful is something has to get released out into the world. If it's a product, if it's just a post, if it's a new email, if it's the way that shiny object syndrome will undo you is if you chase at things and then hold on to them.
Sure.
And it doesn't see the light of day. The trick is you got to, in that moment, put it out. whatever it is. Right? And that can be true for like reaching out to folks, whatever. It has to take external life. And then you've got all the permission in the world for shiny object. It's when you don't that'll devour you, and it'll really hurt your team too. If you're a leader that's doing that, if it's not actually manifesting in some way that's external to you and to the team and to the company.
I like that. Aaron, this has been absolutely incredible talking to you. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, sharing your time with us. If people wanted to connect with you, work with you, follow you, what's the best way for them to reach out and stay in touch?
Hit me up on Twitter is where I'm most active, Aaron Orendorff. You can do LinkedIn, like a few things that I put out, comment on a few things, and then come in for an ask of any kind. Just don't do it in the opposite direction. But I'm low-hanging fruit if you butter me up. My ego is fragile, people. My ego is fragile. Take advantage of it. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you again for jumping on here and walking us through some of these things.
Happily, my friend. I mean that.
And thank you, everybody, for listening in. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.